see.
Okay, it says that it did it on my end.
Okay,
Yes.
it actually said it. Okay. So actually, it's time. I may stall for just 1 minute. Make sure that we get everybody in here. By stalling, I mean I'll just say hello in the traditional Oklahoma way. Hello, everybody. I was asked to speak on give my restorer testimony on somebody's call a few weeks ago, and they said if you can keep it to 4 minutes, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how to even say hello in 4 minutes, but I did it. I did it. I had to bullet point and everything. So, um, I I do think I will just go ahead and jump on in and tell you a little bit of what's been going on. Um, I don't know exactly who my audience is here. This is the first time I have ever opened anything up like this to anybody who wants to be on here, whether you've ever taken Plexus or not, whether you sell Plexus or not, whether you've never even heard of it, because I told you guys you can invite your friends. And so I sort of know who my audience is. I know that most of you are going to be familiar with a lot of the things that I talk about, but I'm also going to very much keep not just this Zoom, but the group very open-hearted to the idea of these types of things are available to anybody. Like the concept of being able to detox, especially like the types of things I really want you guys to learn about, are things that are lifestyle choices. They're not necessarily like products you buy. They're things that you can do, choose to do, choose to switch up in your life, just like we were talking about the other day, choosing to switch up what deodorant you use or what toothpaste you use or something, to take the toxic load off of your body. And I think that is probably a way more well-known concept these days than it was even 10 years ago, for sure, than it was when I was growing up. I don't think people thought about it, but I also do still think that my perspective of it, because of the friend group that I have, is probably a little slanted, because I see a whole lot of people who switch up their toothpaste and their deodorant and stuff, and they don't think anything weird of that. But I also am very mindful of the fact that when I was first being introduced to any kind of concept of anything that was outside the mainstream, that I thought it was weird. I just thought it was very strange that anybody would say that they don't, like, openly say they don't wear deodorant. What they were trying to say is they don't put anything toxic on their armpits. They didn't mean that they were running around smelling. But I just grew up pretty mainstream. I grew up very Fruit Loops and cartoons on Saturday mornings, and so anyway, it's been on my heart to do this type of a group. And because of the fact that I'm long-winded and have extensive background in other kinds of detoxing, I have been hesitant to jump in and do it because of, for years, having always worried about what people think about me. Am I taking up too much of people's time and things like that? And I'll tell you, this last incident that I went through with my husband had gotten me over a bunch of that stuff. And so I have really come to the conclusion that if you're on here and you want to be on here, you want to be on here. If you don't, there is an exit. And I'm not saying that in a rude way, but that gives me the freedom to be like, I had a friend tell me one time, are you okay if I just tell you the whole story? This was about something trauma she was going through in her life. And I was like, yeah. And she said, sometimes you just have to tell the whole story. And I thought, oh gosh, like that's my life is, I feel like I have a friend in my life, pretty close friend, who is a story rusher. And I always feel misunderstood by her. And she doesn't ever say that she misunderstands me, but I know she walks off thinking that was kind of weird. I don't know why she said that. That didn't add up. This didn't add up. And that is because she rushes. She says, but, can you get to the end of it? Because she wants, it's almost like suspense makes her just, bleh. She can't handle all the insides and outsides. So I'm going to start with, I'm Lori Harrison. I'm not going to tell you how my mother had me in the hospital. I'm not going to go that deep, but I am going to say this. My background in all things health is mostly self-taught. And I'm going to encourage you tonight to take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because I want all of us to be self-taught. I believe the fact that we have the taken the word of healthcare providers to make sure to take care of us and know what's best for us, and I think that's a big reason why Americans are sick. Because there's a Zoom that I also have planned for the future that I don't know if we'll do it via Zoom, so don't hold me that. I may just share it. But there was an interview that was shared. It was a young lady and her brother who had all the accolades and all the scholarship and all of the degrees from Stanford and surgical background and all this stuff, and walked away from it completely once they saw what was going on within what we call healthcare. But she was like, she's like, I realized that people were racking up awards and accolades by how many people they were able to cut into. And so they were not trying to do anything to stop the cutting into for surgical purposes and all this kind of stuff. And it is compelling, but it's also really long. It's like movie long. So you have to be like committed. Like maybe you wanted, maybe I should share it and you guys could just take a drive and listen to it, or listen to it on your way somewhere or something. Very good information. A lot of you know what I'm talking about already. You know which one I'm talking about because of just the details that I shared with you. So to give myself a little bit of credence as to why you should lend me your ear at all. Having been self-taught doesn't give me a degree, but I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people who tried to get well for most of their life, and they used all the traditional means and resources to get well and couldn't. And then literally by me listening to their whole story, lots of times I could unwind and figure out timeline wise, what were you doing when you got sick? Like, were you working somewhere specific? Like, had you been pregnant? Did you recently take an antibiotic? I figured out several years ago that did you take an antibiotic right before this happened was a very important question. A lot of people had been on a long, strong round of antibiotics, which actually probably got them well at the time, but did long-term damage to their health that they didn't know how to undo, and neither does traditional healthcare. So I'm going to start by saying I started with the company that I'm with in 2011 as a purchaser only who wanted to lose weight. I bought in on a link that now I know was a sponsored ad. It wasn't a person to my knowledge. It was just a little sponsored ad. I clicked it, wrote it down, didn't want to be too excited by the before and after pictures I saw, clicked back on it a few days later, purchased it, and didn't know I had bought into a business opportunity at the same time. Tried it for a few months, felt so much better, and initially didn't right off the bat lose weight, but I had several previous things that I had sort of just thought were part of my life, like allergies and itchy feet, a janky toenail, brain fog. I didn't know what to call that, but brain fog and other things like that were just sort of disappearing. And I was taking this stuff for weight loss. And so my curiosity was through the roof and I wanted to figure it out. And anybody who asked me, people were asking me before I lost weight what I was doing, probably because I could maintain an attention span better. My mood was better. I was for sure sleeping better, had better energy. I think, did I mention my mood? I had a much better mood, and people were asking me. I was leading worship at church, and I can remember the lady that played the piano was like, "Are you doing something? Like, what's going on with you?" And she was one of my first customers, although I didn't know how to make her a customer. I just gave her my login info and said, just go in there. It'd be like giving somebody your Amazon account now. That's crazy, right? But I trusted her. I'm like, just go in there and order it. You can pay me for it or whatever you want to do. I don't know what to do. And after I racked up a few instances of that behind the scenes outside of Facebook, I hadn't gone public with it yet. I just had a few friends that I felt close enough to that I was telling them my backstory when they would ask me, and they were telling me crazy things. Is this supposed to help my asthma? And I remember being like, I have no idea why that would help your asthma. That doesn't make any sense. This helped my toenails. So how does that connect? That doesn't make sense to me. At that time, my brain didn't realize the overall approach, right? Fast forward a little bit, and I decide one day that I am going to say something about it on Facebook. I didn't have anybody to ask how to talk about it. And I just showed a picture of my toenail and told what had happened, and had a lot of people reach out to me about a toenail. And those same people, a few months later, started telling me things like their joints didn't hurt. And they were giving me names of diseases they had been diagnosed with, but I don't actually believe in those diseases. I don't give them credence, because now I realize that what they were really going through was an immune system that was out of whack. I dug and dug and dug while finally figuring out that I did have a business relationship with this company. I finally figured out that I could share a link with them. People could purchase, it could go straight to them and all that. I thought that was pretty neato. Back then, that was kind of like unheard of. And uh, for me to get the credit for it and them to get the products, and I don't have to give it to them. It wasn't Avon, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, I remember being like, okay, if this is really happening for this many people, and these are the things that are happening, I was keeping a list on my computer of different kinds of disorders, things people were telling me. And one day I put the list on Facebook and asked, can somebody tell me, what do all these things have in common? Help. And one person in the comments said, those all look like autoimmune disorders. And I remember being like, what are those? And after I did that deep dive, that post on Facebook and that deep dive led me, and this is, I'm going to say this as humbly as I can, led me to lead our company down a different road. Even though I didn't have really any influence to really reach out and grab, I just started saying, we got so much more than weight loss here, friends. Look at this, look at this, look at this. And it did have to do with the way that people were detoxing their body. Now, I didn't look at it as detox back then. I was calling it Candida die-off. They were getting rid of fungal infections. That is not exactly what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, although that is the main building block of how I would ever come to have 6 pages worth of Zoom people on here tonight, is because I did build up it took me a while, but I built up an integrity stance with people because I won't BS you. As our company over the years has come out with different products, if it's something great, you're going to hear me talk about it. If it's something that I'm like, I don't know, I mean, it didn't really do anything for me yet, I'm not going to say it's bad, because you never know what something's doing for somebody else. But I am mum's the word, because I don't know until I start getting feedback from people. And so that's sort of that's the reputation that I have within our company. Now, not all of you are within our company, and I'm really excited about that. Not because I plan to sell our company to you. I'm excited about that because after what we just went through with my husband, it has been put even more on my heart about how much people don't know about healthcare, about how you can properly take care of yourself, and how that we are our own advocates. We have to be our own advocates. And so, in the last 4 years, I'm about to connect some dots for you the best that I can. This is not a TED Talk. So I have not streamlined it as well as I would like to in my mind, but I'm going to try to explain something to you that you may not have heard anywhere else, because I have not heard it anywhere else. I have pieced that little bit that I'm about to share with you together myself. In the last 4 years, the viral load, or whatever you want to call what's gone on in the world that they labeled as COVID, which I will tell you that after extensive digging, I believe was bioengineered. I believe that it was, I'm not going to get into deep conspiracies here. I just believe it's synthetic. It was made for a purpose and it either accidentally or intentionally got leaked on us. Okay. That really, whether it was accidental or not, really is only important for legal purposes because it happened, right? And so what I noticed in my feedback community is that so many people started telling me things like, did something change about the product? I feel like the products are not working the way that they used to. And at first I was like, girl, I don't know, but I will check because I am the one that's on top of that. I'm like, did you check something? You guys didn't change something, did you? You're not going to change this, are you? I definitely have a reputation for that as well. And I found out that it didn't change. But what had changed was us. Because I noticed that a lot of things were working different for me, not just Plexus, a lot of things. Your deodorant might have started working different. Your shampoo, your hair might have started falling out. I mean, all kinds of things. And that's because whether you've had COVID or not, you've been exposed to it and your body has fought it off. If you're living, your body has fought off COVID. Uh, it it either you've gone through it and it's fought it off, or you don't know that you've gone through it, but your body has taken on whatever that synthetic bioengineering is. I will tell you that I do believe that it is synthetic and venom like. That's what I believe based on digging and digging. I think they probably took, if you would like to look into that more, I promised myself that I would give you resources if you're a digger like me. Dr. Brian Ardis, Ardis, has done a great dig on finding out what it actually is comprised of. And what how this all came to a head two times for me now, last August and then last night. Last August, I went to an Airbnb with some girlfriends, and many of you may know that, remember this because I posted about it, but it had mold in it. I didn't know immediately. It had been freshly painted. We couldn't see the mold. I eventually could see it on the ceiling in dots, but I just felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest at night. We weren't in the Airbnb all day. It wasn't as much during the day, but when I would go to sleep at night, it was so bad. And the second night there, literally kept thinking to myself, I couldn't even think very rationally, but I kept thinking to myself, do I wake up everybody and tell them I want to go home, make everybody pack their things? Because at that point I hadn't seen mold yet. I didn't know if it was mold or demonic. I was like, what is sitting on my chest? This is nuts. And I told my husband when I got back, I said, I will never go through something like that again without just calling you to come get me. It was 3 hours. It would have been 3 hours for him to come get me. That was when I finally made the decision, just go to sleep because in 3 hours, it's going to be daylight anyway. The next day I talked them into going home a day early. And the other friend that also has struggled with mold toxicity in the past, I walked in there, I said, Chastity, what's in this place? And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, is it a mold or demonic? Because she actually has a radar for both. And she goes, it's mold. She said she'd been wheezing. And I said, okay. Came home and my feet had swelled to almost twice their size. And it set me into some sort of histamine crisis. I didn't know what it was at first. I just knew that the normal things that I would do to nourish my body and get well, things like kombucha, however you say it, kefir, fermented things, were making me worse. That doesn't add up. Well, they're very high in histamine. I didn't know this. In fact, how I figured this out is I feel like this was a God thing, but one day while this was all going on, this was days that I was struggling with this. Um, a friend of mine messaged me. She had been coughing and coughing, and she said, "What are you hearing? What's the feedback community saying? What's getting rid of this cough that's going around?" And I said, maybe try this, maybe try this. Have you tried this? And she told me some things that she had tried. A castor oil pack on her chest, I think is what ended up, that was the feedback that I gave her that ended up helping her. But during that conversation, actually a person who works at corporate had messaged me and said, do you know anything for iron, low iron? This is before we had Iron Woman. What's the trick for low iron? And I thought, how weird. The person that was asking me about the cough stuff is the person, she's my resource for what to do for low iron if you can stomach it. She used to go to the deli and go get liver and cut little slivers, put it all on a cookie sheet, freeze it. Take the frozen slivers, dump them in a Ziploc bag, and every day take one out and let it slide down her throat. I jokingly call them liver slivers. And so I said to her, while she's talking to me about coughing, I'm trying to help this other friend. And I say, "Hey, Amanda, do you still use liver slivers?" And she goes, "Oh, that's it." And I was like, "What? That's what?" She goes, "That's why." She couldn't stop coughing. Okay, so I said, "Why would that make you cough?" She said, "It's high in histamine." And so then my brain starts going, oh my gosh, high in histamine, because my whole body was swelled up. I mean, I was swelled up unrecognizable. My face was doubled in size, my hands, my feet. And I was like, I feel like I've had a histamine. I feel like I've been stung by something. I said, how do you figure out what is and isn't high in histamine? She said, uh, well, she said, I know there's a list called FODMAP. You can go look that up. There's a diet that you can go on. And I thought, how fun, a diet. It's restrictive. You have to basically eliminate any foods not that are just high in histamine, but you also have to eliminate foods that are histamine liberators. Now, I want to explain to you, this has all got a reason I'm telling you all this. A histamine liberator, how they work is if you have ever taken anything to block histamines like antihistamines, Claritin, Allegra, Benadryl, cold medicines that have antihistamines in them, those histamines are not being squashed and gone forever. It's just walling them up in your cells to where they don't make you react. The histamines are still there. But when you drink or eat a histamine liberator, or if you're a lifetime Allegra or Claritin taker and you quit taking Allegra or Claritin and you let the wall down and the gate open, you'll know suddenly you get into hives, can't stop itching. It's terrible, horrible allergic reaction. So either quitting a histamine blocker that you've been on long term, or eating or drinking something that is a histamine liberator will cause your body to go into almost like, I mean, I was borderline anaphylaxis. I was really worried about myself. I was thinking at any given time, I was thinking, if I go to sleep like this, will I wake up? So I went on a really strict diet, figured out really quick if something was or wasn't a histamine or a histamine liberator by sometimes accidentally eating it, like raisins. Don't eat raisins. Don't eat pineapple. Don't eat honey. Now, I'm not telling you don't eat these things. I'm saying if you are in that crisis, that was the only answer I could find. And I did it for months. And we were out of town one time. My husband and I, we went and I got stung by something, not like a bee, but some sort of little bug on my hand, and it looked like a mosquito bite the way they whelp up. So it was hurting bad enough. This is all while this crisis was still going on, that I have them pull over at like a Walgreens while we're on the way to dinner so that I can get anti-itch cream. Well, it stopped itching, but then that night in my sleep all night long, all I could think how to describe it was it felt like twinkling stars in my body, these itchy, twinkly feelings that kept waking me up. It didn't feel like something was crawling on me. It was an inner feeling. And so I was like, what is going on? And so I start Googling that sensation. And it's also connected to, you can have that if you are high in histamine, if you are at the histamine overload, and suddenly you get stung by a bee or anything that pushes you over. Well, friends, here's what I'm here to tell you. COVID is a histamine. That's why it causes all, I mean, it's venom. Venom is histamine. It's a form of histamine. That's why they say you can take a Benadryl and stop some of the effects of a snake bite until you get to the hospital, at least in certain cases. So also, that's why Benadryl and those types of things were suddenly like hard to find. Remember that? They were like, can't get Benadryl anymore, blah, blah, right? Okay. So everyone, I believe, is in high histamine load. And I don't mean that you are walking around itching and scratching. I believe that we're all, anybody who is not properly detoxed from COVID is in high histamine. And all it takes is that one thing. And you may be, the one thing may have already sort of happened. And you may already be walking around like this a little bit. Like, and you may be all like puffed up around the ribs and around the waist. And you might be, okay, don't quote me in saying COVID is a histamine. COVID is a, I see somebody says COVID is a histamine. I didn't know, and I can't read the whole thing, but I thought, okay, don't put that by my name. I believe it's bioengineered synthetic venom. I believe that venom works very much like a histamine. I think I started this with a disclaimer. This is what I've pieced together. If you do one thing like get exposed to mold, if you do one thing like get a bug bite, if you do one thing like whatever, it can set your body into a crisis. Well, something I started really digging into was trying to find out if there was anything that you could do that would just get that over with. Like a detox. I didn't know to call it a detox. I didn't know what needed to detox. I started digging and digging and digging, like, basically, is there something that can prevent me from having to be on a constant histamine diet so that I'm not, or a FODMAP is what they called it. A FODMAP diet, to where I don't have to look at a menu or cook with that constantly in mind, because it wasn't intuitive. And what I mean is, it wasn't like, well, it's high in fat, so this, or it's high in this. I had to look at a list every single time before I ordered anything. Yes, FODMAP, FODMAP. By the way, that's about to become irrelevant. I'm about to tell you why it doesn't matter. I couldn't piece it all together until this year. Actually, I pieced it all together last night as I was about to go to sleep. This year in March, at the end of March, they asked me to be a tester for a liver detox. That's not what they told me it was. They told me it was a weight loss trial. They tricked me. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I probably would have done it if it was a liver detox, but I mean, it doesn't sound that fun, right? Like, okay. Okay, so I'll do it. I take it. I realize what it is. It's Restore. And I'm like, ugh, I've had that before. It's not my favorite flavor of things we've ever done. I had tried it in the Reset, but it said an enhanced flavor. And I was like, okay, I'm willing to give this a try. I think I was on it for 2 weeks before my husband's accident. I was on it long enough that when the company called me to ask me what they could do while my husband was in ICU, because sometimes they will do whatever you want. The only thing I could think is, I need more of that stuff. I'm about to run out. I felt so much better. Okay. So fast forward to convention. I'm one of the only, I think there's only been 2 people that have been on it as long as I have been on it. Me and one other person that have been on it as long as we have. I was losing weight, that was the least of my concerns when my husband was in the hospital because I couldn't have really told you if it was even nerves causing that. But I was sleeping in a hospital chair and I was actually sleeping. And previous to that, sleeping was not something I was great at. I mean, I had done certain things in my life that had made me better at it. But uh, last night, as I was going to bed, I should have led with in the very beginning that I said we were going to listen to a podcast tonight, and we are going to at least start it. But I had to tell this story because last night, as I went to bed, we sleep with humidifiers on. Ever since COVID, I sleep with a humidifier on beside my bed. It's actually one of those cool mist. It's just a vapor. It doesn't make everything wet in the room and all this kind of stuff. And I had when Jetty was in the hospital, I had put one by him too because the way he's been sleeping on his back causes him sometimes to mouth breathe. And I was like, better put a humidifier by him. And as I turned his on last night, something smelled wrong. I was like, and I leaned down and I could smell, and I was like, I probably hadn't cleaned that recently enough. Smelled mildewy. So I turn it off. And then I try to figure out how to clean it better than what I had cleaned it before. And I just left it off. And then I went to bed and tossed and turned and conjured in my mind all the possibility of mold spores floating in my room and freaked myself out to the point that I was imagining histamine problems. I was imagining, and you know what? This is a spiritual thing that I'm about to tell you. I don't make you believe it. You don't have to believe it. But I literally said, I'll look it up in the morning if you'll make it go away. Because I knew tomorrow is that Zoom. I'm supposed to look up what histamines and liver have in common. Like what a histamine overload and a liver detox, like, and it is an amazing correlation. People who are living and breathing right now have a high histamine load because of COVID. My neighbor's here. Hang on just 1 second.
Why don't everybody type in the chat where they're from?
She's been taking care of our chickens. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, if you're living and breathing now, you have a histamine load on you. And by cleansing your liver, I believe that's why people are getting the results that they're getting with Restore. And I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. We're going to turn on this. Let's see what time it is. Okay, yeah. I was hoping to speak to you about 30 minutes before we turn this on. We won't be able to listen probably to the entire thing tonight, but it will give you enough of an insight into things that you can do that don't cost you anything, and mostly the relevance of detoxing your body and lymph nodes. Lymph nodes is what we're going to talk about tonight, and that's something that you can do on a regular basis. I have to say one more thing. Another correlation that I had put together is at some point since we got home, my feet started itching again. And I couldn't figure out, this is important to know. I couldn't figure out why that would be because I haven't had itchy feet in years, ever since I got on Plexus. And one morning, someone sent me a message joking about the MTHFR gene, which is it's a gene mutation that's about somewhere between 40 and 60% of people have. And she was making a joke about how MTHFR sounds like a dirty word and something that she had said online one day. And as she said it, I thought, I personally have never been tested for it. I don't really like to get tested for things. I'm kind of stubborn like that. But also, survey says probably, okay. So based on the way my body works. And I thought, oh my gosh, MTHFR is all about detox pathways, the way that your body rids toxins. And if your detox pathways are not open, you can have all kinds of problems, especially anybody can, but especially if you have an MTHFR gene mutation. Well, it dawned on me, my body is detoxing so hard from this restore, and it's trying to come out my feet. And I've got a detox pathway messed up. So I start talking about it on Facebook. I'm like, hey, is anybody talking about detox pathways? Like, I'm asking in our diamond group, in our company group. I'm like, hey, and a lot of people started messaging me and saying things like, for example, that they were on the trial, they were a tester, and they had a lot of trouble with it and they quit. And a lot of those people are the same people, and even newbies who have started it ever since convention are the same people who grew up with mold exposure or have MTHFR. And so I knew I needed to share that. I see some light bulbs going off. If your detox pathways, and this is what we're about to talk about, we're about to talk about the lymphatic system. If your detox pathways, if your toilets won't flush, because he's going to tell you your lymphatic system, look at there, I'm sweating. I knew I was going to sweat doing this Zoom. If your lymphatic system is not properly, if it's not properly flushing, if your little lymph nodes are not flushing, and if your other detox pathways are stopped up, this product is not going to work for you the way that you want it to work. Now, there is a call that I will share at a later date, the one that I was on, where Wendy Larson shared the fact that when she was a tester, and when she started on it, she started grieving the loss of her best friend from 4 years before. And she was like, whoa, what is going on? And thankfully, Lori Bradford told her, stay on it. I think because your liver holds on to like what was going on when your liver went through something. Like if your liver went through trauma, let's say you went through a medical crisis, and your liver sometimes can get backed up. And she said, when you start to detox your liver, you may go through a short spell of something. And she said, I'm not saying it couldn't also be emotional for you. She told that she initially gained 10 pounds. Could have even been histamine related now that I'm thinking about it, as her body was detoxing. And then she went on and lost 20 more on top. She lost the 10 that she gained, and she lost 20 more. And we've only had this product, well, she would have had it since April, end of March till April. And she's in the trial period. So she lost 30 pounds. She initially gained 10 and lost, but then she lost that 10 and lost 20 more. Now, there are so many things that I want to say about whether you're with Plexus and whether you're not with Plexus. And if you want more information, and if you do want more information, you do need to ask the person that has invited you. I think I'll just leave it at that for tonight. If you've been with Plexus before and you haven't ordered in a while, you need to get with whoever invited you or message me and I'll help you figure it out. If you want to try this path toward a detox. But we're about to listen to somebody who's probably never even heard of Plexus talk about the lymphatic system. And I'm probably going to give you enough of this tonight to wet your whistle, and you'll want to listen to the rest of it, or we can maybe turn it into another Zoom at some other time. But I'm going to turn that on for us right now because I think I was so impressed by his knowledge. Okay, hold on one second. Feel free to chat. I'll try to answer some questions in the chat while we're listening regarding what I've said and anything that he's going to talk about too. So hang on one second here. I have to find it. All right.
Hey, everybody, it's Chris. And today my guest is Dr. Perry Nicholson. Perry is a chiropractor, but he
I'll hear it.
His website is stopchasingpain.com. And so we're going to talk about pain and the lymphatic system, correct?
Oh, yeah, That's
You got to
just
spend a lot of time
Yeah.
going deep down this rabbit hole. And I'm excited to get into this because a lot of people don't understand the lymphatic system. They've got a lot of questions about it, about detoxification. Obviously, if people have chronic pain issues, they're looking for help. And I'm excited about what you do and what you have to share because I think it's going to help a lot of people get clarity and hopefully give them some very practical, actionable advice and information that they can use. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me on the show. Yeah, they'll definitely get some practical things that they can take away from it on learning about the lymphatic system. It's a life changer without question.
So why don't we start with your backstory?
Yeah, so well, I've been practicing for going on 30 years now. My original degree was in chiropractic, but I like anybody else who loves what they do and loves to learn. I started to practice many other different types of disciplines, mixing that in, and it just so happens that I'd say, I don't know, about 10 years ago now, ended up getting really, really sick with, I guess, what you could say is an autoimmune disorder. I think I had all of them, quite honestly with you. That's how bad I felt. And it taught me to have to think differently because the way that I was trying to get myself better wasn't working, but also the way that everybody else was coming at it wasn't working. So then I realized I had to empower myself to think differently. And that's when I started to look at different systems of the body, not just the musculoskeletal system that most people are familiar with. That's muscles, fascia, and joint. And even I had to move beyond the nervous system, right? Because I was going after those things. But when I got really, really sick, it was more of an immune system problem that I had to deal with. And that's what led me to working with, and I'll call it discovering the lymphatic system, honestly, because here's the thing. I was practicing for 20 years before I ever paid attention to it, right? It wasn't even on my radar until it had to be. And then when I found it, I was like, okay, where has this been all my life? And why didn't I know about it? And so then I dedicated myself to understanding the system inside and out by tying it to all the other different systems. And then that also became my launching point, if you will, to now teach this to every other human being on the earth about that system.
That's great. And I love that you're doing it because I think if you asked 10 people on the street, what is the lymphatic system? I don't think any of the 10 people could tell you, right? They could explain it. They probably, most people just don't know, like, what is it? So why don't we start there? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what I'm really happy to see is that more and more people are starting to hear about it. Like if you go on social media and you see lymphatics are starting to circulate. Right? Now, one, I think there's a couple reasons for that. Is when you start to work with it, you feel different really quick. I mean, it's powerful. It's a grassroots movement of, holy cow, this is great. I'm going to keep doing it. But also they're looking more closely at the lymphatic system because now they're seeing its relationship to neuroinflammation and problems with the brain. So then that's really where they're focusing. So now they're seeing that they all work together, which I'm happy to see. So let's kind of start with the fundamental basics of the lymphatic system, of what it is. So it's actually part of two primary systems in your body. One is the immune system. It's I think it's the most important part of your immune system anyway, because its job is to scan things that come into your body through what they call lymph nodes. They're basically little mini scanners. I call them little mini toilets because their job is to find stuff, scan it, read it, tell your immune system what something is so it knows what to send out to get rid of it. Kind of like
They're like
like
checkpoints.
Yeah, it's like going to the supermarket and you scan a code and you know whether I'm getting oranges or apples. That's what has to happen with your immune system. And it kills anything, it tries to kill anything that comes on there. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungus, cancer cells, even your own metabolic waste that's in your body, it's got to get out. It's like the sewage system in your house that flushes you out so you don't die and you can live longer. So it's really important. And if it becomes dysfunctional, you're going to feel it in some way, shape, or form, most likely through inflammation somewhere. So it's a huge part of your immune system. So in my world, if you've got an immune system problem, you got a lymphatic system problem, zero discussion. It just depends on how much of a role it's playing. Now, the other one that they don't really pay much attention to, but I think is actually even equally important, is it's part of your circulatory system, i.e. your vascular system. So that's blood flow. And that's big because if you don't get blood flow to cells, you're not living long. Okay? The reason they tie together is that the lymphatic system dumps its end product into the veins of the body, the venous system of the body. So it's roughly the same material. It just changes names of what it is depending on where you find it. It's either in the lymphatic system or the veins. So the veins and the lymph always work together. And what's interesting, when you look at embryology, the lymphatic system grew from the venous system. So in my world, it means this. If you have a lymphatic system issue, you will have a circulation issue. If you have a circulation issue, you will have a lymphatic system issue. Now, lots of people have been talking about vascular, but they've been overlooking the lymphatics in relationship to that. And that's huge because we'll get into it later of how that's the supply chain that your cells need in order to get nutrients to it and get the waste out after the cells use the nutrients. Two fundamental things. So those are the big players with the lymphatic system. So to take away from this is to remember, it's the waste management system of your body. And it's also a huge player in circulation.
And a lot of the cells that are moving throughout the lymph system are immune cells, correct?
Yeah, they're pretty much the way that your immune system knows what to send out and when, why, and how, right? And so if that system gets overloaded, overburdened, but I call it choked or stagnated, it just gets overwhelmed, and then it starts to send out signals all the time. It's just like, okay, overload, just kill everything, right? And it doesn't stop sending out the signals. And the way that your body kills things is through inflammation. You're supposed to get inflammation because that's how you destroy things and you heal and recover. So it's also a repair system at the same time. But if you're stuck with all this metabolic waste, cellular waste, toxic waste inside of the body, then your body just says, well, guess what, guys, keep killing. And then you stay inflamed until you can begin to help that move out of you. Now, this is when people ask me, why does it get overloaded? Why does it get stagnated? So my tongue-in-cheek answer is this, but I'm really not kidding. It's called LIFE. It's the price you pay from living on this planet through stress and anxiety and toxins that are coming at you from so many different ways you can't even describe them all. Emotional trauma, physical trauma, nutrition or lack thereof. It just all adds up. And then the toilets or the lymph nodes get clogged like in your house and they don't flush, and then you get disease or dis-ease. And the only way you're going to get that stuff out of you is two primary ways the lymphatic system moves itself so it can stay healthy. One is through movement. So the more you move of yourself, more often, more ways, more environments, more places, well, then you use muscles. And the muscles actually pump the lymph, and then the muscles actually pump the veins of the body as well. Problem is, humans don't move a lot, right? Especially over the last couple of years, we're very sedentary because of the pandemic. So we have poor movement.
And it was already bad before the pandemic.
Yeah, so
it's already a big problem.
Exactly. So we don't move. And then when we do move, we usually move the same way all the time. And that causes problems too, because then you have certain patterns of movement where your body lays down lines of tension and stress. And then that changes how fluid moves, kind of like how fluid moves down a mountain stream around blocks and rivers. It goes one way because it's just the way it's always gone. So people that do the same movement all the time end up with problems too. So that's why you got to vary it up. And the other way that it's supposed to move is through breathing, but not just any breathing. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. Most people may have heard of diaphragmatic, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think they have.
I don't think they have.
Because when you're in health and fitness, you're in a small bubble where most of the earth is not living, and they don't even know what a diaphragm muscle is or about breathing. So it's a muscle in your body that sits at the bottom of the rib cage here above your organs. And basically, when you engage that muscle through breathing, it increases pressure in your body and it decreases pressure in your body. That increase and decrease is a pump. And it pumps not just the lymphatic fluid, but the fluids throughout the body. But that's the pump. So if you don't know about diaphragmatic breathing and you're not moving, I just shut down your toilet system. And it's going to stay inside of you, and then you're going to get inflammation. And this is where sometimes the blockages are, so many of them, so deep in the body, and I mean that literally, because we'll get over the different layers of the lymphatics in a moment, from the skin all the way down to your spine, that breathing and moving are no longer enough to unblock it. You have to get in there and manually do it by hand. Just like I got to go in there sometimes, and when your toilet's clogged, you can flush it all you want, but it's usually going to overflow. You got to snake it, or you got to plunge it, and then it knows exactly where to go. And that's what lymphatic manual massage type work is all about, unclogging your toilets. Now, here's an interesting thing. You've got roughly, depending on the resources that you read, 600 to 700 of those lymph nodes in the body, those mini toilets. And they gather in clusters, like little communities. Okay? And there's specific places where they gather the most. And here's a cool thing about how your body is designed. They're located around the joints of your body that are supposed to have the most movement to them, like your shoulders and your hips and your knees and the upper part of your neck where your skull is, and your belly and your abdomen. But if you think about the posture and the position that most humans live in all day long, what is it?
It's sitting.
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're inflection on everything. That means bending, and you're choking off every single one of those places that I told you about, because you've got excess tension in the muscles and in the fascia. And this is a really, really important thing for people to grasp here. Tight tissue does not accept blood flow well or fluid flow well. So when you have excess tension, you starve your cells of the ability to get nutrients in and get waste out, and then you're going to feel it somewhere.
Yeah, it's like if you think about analogy of a garden hose, right? If you fold it in half, it restricts the flow of the water, right? And when you're sitting down, your hips are folded, your knees are folded, your arms or elbows are folded, right? You're just all folded up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we curl into like this tight, tense withdrawal position, like a fetal position, which is basically a safety position, right? You curl in tight on yourself to escape the world trying to crush you. It's the opposite of standing tall, lean, mean, and confident with your shoulders back and your arms rotated out and looking up to the sky and experiencing the world. It's the exact opposite where it needs to be. Now, if I may, I think there's a great analogy that will really help people kind of grasp this. So I mentioned the toilet system in your house, which is a big one that people can understand. But I found when you're trying to explain something that's new to someone or can seem complicated or convoluted, analogies work really well to tie to something they're already familiar with. And I do that through an example of a fish tank. So my program is called Body Aquarium, because if you think about it, an aquarium. Now, your body is mostly fluid. It's mostly water, like a lot. Not to mention that dehydration is one of the biggest things that are going to crush your lymphatic system, and most people are dehydrated. The lymphatic system is 90% water. Wrap your brain around that one. So if you're dehydrated, it already dried up your stream, right? Now, your cells live in a fluid environment. It's called interstitial fluid. That just means fluid between the cells. And it's like a fish living in a fish tank. And the fish would be your cells, but you got a couple of trillion in your fish inside your body, right? Now, if you look inside of a fish tank, usually you'll see a little filter up in the corner with bubbles coming out of it. And then underneath the fish tank that you can't see, you've got all these little pipes and filters and stuff like that. And then those are the things that keep the water circulating. And it takes out all the fish poop, because the fish poop all day long, just like your cells do. And then you put food inside the tank to feed the fish, right? So you've got the food contents in there, and then the waste from that. And then the filter gives that stuff out, and the one in the corner gives you oxygen, right? Now, if your filter system works great, the water looks crystal clear, and the fish are thriving, and they look great. They're having an awesome time. Now, what happens if that filter system, something goes wrong with it? You don't notice it right away, right? Usually it takes you a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Then all of a sudden, what does the water start to look like? It's very murky. It actually starts to turn green, and you see funky things growing on the glass. That's bacteria, viruses, toxins, like biofilm, they call that. And then humans have biofilm inside of them. It can make you really sick. And then all of a sudden, you soon see stuff grow on the fish, like scales, like dis-ease. But if you've ever looked closely into the tank, have you ever seen a fish struggling to breathe in water that doesn't have a lot of oxygen in it? Right? It's like this. It's doing the best it can with what it's got, but it's slowly dying. Well, that's the same thing that happens to your cells, man, because if cells don't get oxygen, you're not living long. And when you don't get oxygen, something somewhere is going to hurt. You will have pain somewhere. So this is where I ask people, how would you go about fixing that tank? Would you just take out the water, take out the fish, clean the tank, put new water in there, and then everything's great? No or no? No, you wouldn't do that, because what's going to come back? The same thing, right? But that's what we do in healthcare and in medicine. We clean the tank and we blame the fish. And I'm like, why don't you just look at the filter system? So that if you go in there and then you clean the filters, unclog the filters, make sure they function well, then you put the stuff back in there. So what's the moral of this story? It's this. In my world, lymphatic work always comes first, because I got to make sure your tank works. Because here's also the dirty little secret. Everything that you're chasing to try to get better in your body lives in the tank. So the filter system is the one that determines whether all the other stuff you're trying to do actually works. Does that make sense?
It does.
And even when you clean the tank, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be great and some stuff won't go wrong. But what I am going to contend is you stand a much better chance of having a longer, happier life with less pain, less discomfort, less diseases or dis-ease and chronic pain if you have a clean tank as opposed to a dirty one. I'll stand by that one until I'm dead.
To use a similar analogy with the cancer industry, if there's a dirty tank, it's like, well, let's just add some chlorine. That'll clear up the water, right? You add enough chlorine, and yeah, you cleared up the water, and then the fish are dead, right? And that's their typical approach.
Yeah, so you always have to think the environment. And there's a phrase that I can't remember who said it, but I love it, is you cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within.
Wow.
Yeah.
That means your external environment, but also your internal environment that you're living. Now, here's what's fascinating. Now, I'm going to check on my phone in a second, because it's an article that just came out in Nature magazine. And this is the title, and I'll break it down in English for a second. Extracellular fluid viscosity. So what does that mean? Extracellular fluid means it's fluid outside the cell, because intra is inside. Extracellular fluid is basically what I just told you about the fish tank. Viscosity is the thickness of the fluid, right? like engine oil. You got really thick oil or you got thinner oil. Enhances cell migration and cancer dissemination. So what does that mean? That means that when you have a lymphatic system or a fish tank system that doesn't work well, you are going to get increased viscosity around the cells of the body because the stuff can't get out. It's got to stay there. And then you're going to get thick blood, viscous blood, aka dirty blood, because it goes into the venous system. And that right there is telling you it increases your rate of cancer spreading throughout the body.
Yeah, just thick blood, thick lymphatic fluid, like sludge, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about the delivery mechanism, right? So you got to remember that everything that is going through the vascular system, think about them as pipes, right? You have big giant pipes, and then those go into smaller pipes, and they end up into really tiny ones called capillaries. And the capillaries are the delivery point where Amazon drops the box at your house. Okay, you can only get one blood cell through at a time, and one through the capillary. Now imagine if the blood is thicker and it's sludgy. Well, then they're going to clump together, and then they can't get out. So that means that even though you have, AKA maybe like nutrients or oxygen in your system, that's good. But it's not going to make much difference if it can't reach its endpoint, the delivery mechanism. Right? In order for that to happen, you have to clean your fish tank. Right? Because here's the thing about the body. The body, you can put stuff in the body all day long, but it doesn't mean the body's going to absorb it, and it doesn't mean it's going to metabolize it if it can't get rid of it.
Well, and a byproduct of thick, sludgy blood is decreased circulation, like you said. When your blood is thick, it's not getting to all the way to the end of the line where it needs to go. And so your body responds by increasing your blood pressure, right?
Yes.
It has to push harder to get your thick, sludgy blood all the way out to where it's supposed to go.
Exactly right. So that's your heart. Boom, boom, boom. Heart gets faster, right? And then that feeds into your autonomic nervous system, where your blood pressure goes up. Then the body is sensing, okay, there's some serious stuff going on here, man. I'm going to put you in what they call sympathetic dominant fight or flight. That's where, okay, I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to grow. I don't have time to recover because I got to not die right now. That's the most important, because it's really hard to heal when you're dead. The problem is you just get stuck there, right?
Yeah.
And, listen, you may need to take blood pressure medication, because here's the dirty little secret. You're allowed to have more than one problem. You might have more stuff going on. But when you put that stuff into your system, you're adding to the toxicity of your fish tanks. Because everything that goes into your mouth, no matter how good it is, this is really important for people to understand. Like putting good stuff in your mouth, like nutrient-dense real food, and not the processed crappy food that most humans, that's good. But your cells are going to try to use no matter what you put in there, right? Good or AKA bad. But good stuff makes waste just like bad stuff makes waste. So it still goes to the same place. So that's why I tell people is that putting good stuff in is awesome. But I'm going to contend to you, it ain't going to make much difference in the long run if you don't clean out what's already in your toilet.
Yeah, an analogy I like to use is that every cell in your body is like a little car, right? It's using fuel, it's burning fuel for energy, but it has exhaust that's toxic, right? And that exhaust, it doesn't just float away into the atmosphere, right? That exhaust is expelled by every cell into your body, and it has to be eliminated, has to be detoxified, and it has to flow out through either you breathe it out, you sweat it out, you pee it out, you poop it out, or it comes out in mucus, right? And the lymphatic system is taking it from the cells to the various detoxification organs.
Yes. And if you think about this, all those organs that you listed, the primary reason you have organs is for elimination, waste management, detoxification, if you want to use that word. It's kind of a big buzzword right now. I just use the word waste management. Right? And if one of those routes become compromised, all the other routes are going to try to help you out. Right. So if you're, first of all, if your lymphatic system is compromised, all the other ones are going to struggle. Because here's an interesting point. You have a lot of lymph in your body. You've got about 15 liters of lymph, 5 liters of blood. So what does that tell you in the order of what the body thinks might be important? Lymph, right? And it's located in strategic places. I told you about the joints of your body, but there's a lot of lymph at the skin, a lot. And you have a ton of lymph. Most of the lymph is in your gut and your abdomen. And it sits there because most of your immune system, the current stat is 70 to 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. So if you have a gut problem, you will have a lymph problem. If you have a lymph problem, you will have a gut problem. And everybody has a gut problem. They just don't know it yet, is my mantra. Because when stuff breaks through a gut lining that's not supposed to be there, well, then what system is supposed to keep you alive? Your immune system. So that's where the lymph sits. So it goes right into the lymph system first to try to get rid of it, particularly the proteins, right? Because lymph is supposed to get rid of the proteins. So it's in your gut. And the other one is in your neck. Listen to this stat. If you've got about 600 to 700 lymph nodes in your body, 1/3 of that number is from the collarbone up. Now, why do you think that is? If you thought about that logically, why do you think nature, your body, whatever you believe in, put that many in your neck? Because your brain lives up there. You got to get the stuff out of your head, out of your brain there. So in my world, everybody needs work on the gut and on the collarbone up, period, no matter what. So that's why your skin is one of the best diagnostic places that I look for issues that you have. So I look at your skin quality because lymph sits there. But if you have an issue where if your liver is overloaded, for instance, if your kidneys are not working well, or you have constipation or issues with irritable bowel syndrome or poor microbiome diversity in your gut, and you even have problems with your lungs, because there's a thing called the gut-lung axis. Gut and lung go together. Lung and gut go together. Here's a dirty little secret. They all go together. That if they don't work well, the skin carries the load. And then you bleed the toxins through your skin. And the next thing you know, why I've always got acne on my face. So I just told you why. How many lymph nodes are in your neck? If you got clogged lymph nodes in your neck or at your collarbone, you're going to bleed it through the face. Now, remember I told you before about how the lymph dumps into the veins? It dumps into the veins right at the collarbone, on the right side and on the left side. It's called the subclavian vein. Sub means below, clavian for clavicle, and vein. That's the primary drainage point of the lymphatics, and all of the vein fluid in your body goes there. It's the lowest pressure of fluid flow in the body, but I'm going to put a tagline on that. It's supposed to be the lowest pressure that's there. But if you have the poor posture, if you have your head living really far over your shoulders, right? You're rounding in your shoulders. You're breathing from your neck and your shoulders and your lungs, not your diaphragm. You overwork the tissue at your collarbone. It gets tight, and guess what? It chokes off all that flow to your brain and from your brain. So then you'll end up with one of the most common signs of lymphatic and vascular issues in the body, which is brain fog. If you have brain fog, in my world, you got a blood flow and a lymph problem.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying right here.
Yeah, above and below.
Above and below.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people know to check above, but very few people check underneath. And you need to check there. I don't want to get too deep down the rabbit.
I want to pause really quick and say that I shared the points in a graphic today, you know, the points that he says to do, but also I am sure, I haven't looked it up, but I'm quite sure this man's been around long enough that you can find him in video form as well. So if you're wanting to, if you're wanting to do a deep dive on this and uh, know exactly how these do, I I believe, I'm going to say this and then we'll go back to this, but I believe the reason I didn't have problems with Restore is because I do lymphatic massage every day. I have for years. And I do Epsom salt baths, not as often as I should. Now I do them more often because the minute I detoxed my feet quit itching and my skin is better than it's been in years. And I'm not talking about like acne wise. I haven't really had a trouble with acne in a long time, but I'm talking about texture is all I can really describe it as. Skin texture feels completely different. And I mean, it all makes sense to me when you think that if your liver is backed up or if any of your lymphatic system is backed up, it makes sense. It's not the traditional Western medicine approach to medicine. They usually treat blood pressure with blood pressure medicine. They treat this with this, and they don't take an overall approach. And apparently they don't even teach them nutrition while they're in medical school. They don't even talk about what's going in your mouth and toxicity and toxic load. And for sure, they weren't taught about COVID and everything that our bodies have gone through during COVID. But I just thought I would interject and share that if you're visual like I am, like I said, I already do lymphatic massage, but I really want to watch this man do lymphatic massage. So I encourage you to look him up. In fact, I will and share in the group so that you can watch him actually do it if you're more of a visual learner. Okay, I'm going back so we can listen some more. I'm trying really hard not to interrupt. It's very hard because I keep thinking of things. Okay.
Rabbit hole there, but there's a muscle that sits up underneath there called subclavius. Sub means below, clavius for clavicle. It's a muscle that sits up underneath the collarbone. And when it gets really, really tight,
clavicle,
it clamps down the pipes. And then that will influence, you're really going to struggle to drain your brain waste and get blood flow to the brain when you do that. Now, this is really important for people to understand that when you get the excess waste in the brain, you get the brain fog, you get what's called neuroinflammation, but you also have what's called the neuroimmune response, which means your nervous system and your immune system always work together, which means your brain can be a hot mess because your immune system is a hot mess.
Makes sense.
Right. And it can go the other way around at the same time. But you can't drain toxins from your brain and they live up and through, and you get poor oxygen flow to the brain. And then maybe, just maybe, that will influence how your brain interprets pain. Because the neurons that sit in your brain are the most metabolically active tissue in the body. There's a lot of metabolic activity in your brain from the cajillions of neuronal firing. So what does that mean when something's highly metabolic? A lot of energy. It's a lot of energy processing. And when you have high metabolism, you have high waste at the same time. And then so your brain is living in sludge.
I'm interrupting one more time. I have to tell you something that this always makes me think of. Early on in my plexus stuff, one of our products, we now call it body cream. It was called breast cream initially. The way that they literally would teach us to talk about it was that it keeps lymphatic fluid moving. It has what's in it to keep lymphatic fluid moving. And that's how it keeps that breast tissue healthy. The things that are in body cream keep lymphatic fluid moving. And so if you have body cream, I still call it breast cream. If you have body cream, when you do these, I think it's really smart to do the massage using that on your fingers because it has it has spirulina and rosemary and all the things in it to keep the lymphatic fluid moving. So just tossing that in there while we're listening. I'm going back.
And you're wiring and you're firing to be able to give you what they call that neuroplasticity. So you can think and link and make new pathways.
That's right.
Is going to be compromised. because you can't drain your brain. That's the stuff that they're really seeing now in studying the brain that's really taken off, is that, holy cow, the brain actually does communicate with the immune system, and it drains into the lymphatic system. And just this week, they actually discovered a new layer of the brain, the coverings of the brain. I mean, think about that. That's absolutely astoundingly incredible. Just when we think we know it all, we discover a new layer around the brain. And it's called part of your meningeal layers. And it's intricately linked to the lymphatic system.
Yeah, I talk about this in my book too. When you this sort of semi-recent discovery that the brain, when you're sleeping, there's sort of what they liken to a dishwasher effect of the cerebrospinal fluid in your brain, where the brain is trying to clean itself, and fluid is sort of washing in and out of your brain, trying to detoxify all. And the reason that sleep deprivation makes people insane over time is because all these toxins build up in your brain while you're awake, and they really don't get flushed out until you go to sleep, for the most part, right?
100%, absolutely. So, people struggle to sleep, and then I'm going to kind of turn it around and say, well, maybe you're struggling to sleep because you got so much brain waste. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Yes, probably both. Right? So people don't sleep because they're strung up with stress, high cortisol at night. They're staring at the ceiling. They're in sympathetic dominance. So the brain just stays that way, and you can't sleep. Then,
and of course, stimulants and coffee don't help either.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So they're just slamming that stuff in left and right. And then stack on that the poor breathing, where you don't use your diaphragm, because that drives the cerebrospinal fluid, the pump. So it actually helps pump the waste from your brain. If you go on YouTube, you see some really cool pictures when they speed up how much the brain stem actually pumps when you have good diaphragmatic breathing and when you breathe through your nose. Like, just breathing through your nose helps your brain drain. Breathing through your mouth will destroy it. So
how is that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, you have about a week. But basically the big part of it is that I'm going to kind of talk about the role of the tongue, because I talk a lot about the tongue. Nobody ever talks about the tongue, because
this is so interesting what he's about to say.
Until you bite into it, then you're like, wow, that really hurts. Most people breathe from their mouth open instead of their nose. A lot of it's just because you forgot how to breathe through your nose, stress kicked in, poor posture, things like that. But with your mouth is open, the tongue lies flat in what's called the floor of the mouth at the bottom, this way. And that compromises the airway. So you actually decrease the amount of airway going down, and it changes the alignment of your whole body from your head all the way down to your toes. And it causes excess tension up in the muscles of your neck, in the front, and in the back. And then you're not breathing through your nose. Okay. So automatically when you do that, you decrease the amount of oxygen that reaches to your lungs, and you decrease the amount of what they call nitrous oxide that is what's called a vasodilator. When you breathe through your nose, it helps you dilate your blood vessels. Well, that's good because it expands and you can get more stuff to things, right? That's a big component of draining the brain. And people sleep at night. They sleep with sleep apnea. They snore, or the mouth is open like this, and the mouth gets dry. And then you get periodontal disease, you get gum disease, you got lymph in your teeth and in your mouth and in your tongue, and that dries up. And then that's a whole other bag that we're dealing with. But so that shuts down the whole pump mechanism. When you put your tongue at the roof of your mouth and you seal it up at the top, the whole thing, the tip and the back, like this way, what that does is it's like a hydraulic pressure pump system. It changes how the pressure moves throughout the body, because it's stuck to the roof of the mouth. When you do that, you'll automatically pull your head back closer to your shoulders. You'll line up your airway here, which will change how you engage your diaphragm, and you'll help pump the lymph that's at the roof of your mouth and all around your head. So everything in the body works based on pressure. Nothing moves without pressure. And you have what's called fluid hydrolysis.
Pausing it again to add in here. Maybe somebody will know the answer to this. I can't think of the name of what they call it. It's a made up word, but there is someone in either orthodontics or dentistry who sort of revolutionized a way of thinking, but it didn't go mainstream because there's no profit in it. And it's exactly what he just described. It's called something like zooming or zumming, or somebody will know what it's called. And it's basically the principle of retraining yourself to breathe with the tongue completely thrust up against the top of the mouth and everything pulled in. And the most compelling evidence for what it does for people is that it takes people who have a thrusted out jaw, or a jaw that's set back, or even people whose cheekbones are drooping down low or whatever. And after a few weeks of simply changing that, no sort of devices, no sort of surgical intervention, nothing like that, simply by teaching them how to do this technique in the way that they breathe, their entire shape of their face changes from the side almost completely unrecognizable. Children who have who need what you would call orthodontic help, you would look at them and say, oh gosh, look at that chin, look at their jaw, like someone that they might break their jaw in order to change. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You've known someone who's had this done. And this family, it's a man and his son, I think now carries the torch for it. I will try to find it. I sent it to my sister because my sister is she's a dental hygienist, and she's really interested in natural approaches. And so I sent this to her because of she has some mouth breathing tendencies. I'm sure she's thrilled that I'm telling that. And also some of our kids in our family have some mouth breathing tendencies. And literally the before and afters of just a few weeks of changing the way that they hold their mouth during the day completely changes their bone structure, because it's pushing on the roof of their mouth in a way that's the way their mouth is supposed to form, rather than the way their mouth forms as a mouth breather. Similar to like what thumb sucking does. You've seen people say that, thumb sucking will cause orthodontic problems or whatever, because that's not the way it's supposed to be shaped. But that's how soft tissue the top of your mouth is that by pushing your tongue up like that, it can literally change the shape. Is somebody saying the name of this? Okay, no. Anyway, I see it. I see people talking, but anyway, I thought that was super fascinating too, because of how quickly they do orthodontic work these days. They do it once at 9, and then they do it again at 13, and they do it again at 18, and it's like, that's because there's a better answer for it. Like there's a better answer, and it's all natural and it's free. Okay. Here we go. I'm turning it back on.
Alex, that's how fluids move based on pressure systems of the body. The diaphragm is a hydraulic pressure mover. They actually consider in osteopathic medicine the tongue to be a hydraulic amplifier like your diaphragm. They actually call the tongue its own diaphragm, because diaphragm is just a word for pressure. Okay? So if you lock your tongue at the roof of your mouth, it will automatically improve how you use your diaphragm down in your abdomen. So mouth breathers are always going to struggle. Now, here's the thing that happened to me. I was really, really sick. And I had a lot of mucus and phlegm and sinus congestion and clearing my throat. And like you mentioned before, right, that's a mechanism that your body is trying to eliminate things, but it's also a coating, a protective mechanism. It's going to try to surround things for you. So I was clearing my throat all the time, but I couldn't breathe through my nose. So even if you told me to put my tongue at the roof of the mouth and then try to breathe through my nose, I would say I cannot do that. But when I started to do the lymphatic work, then everything started to move, and then the stuff started to get out, and then my immune system said, okay, guys, we can back off the mucus now. And then I can start to breathe through my nose. So it cycles back to what I told you the first time. You know, work your lymph,
Okay.
then stick your tongue at the roof of your mouth.
I'm going to pause
Right.
again.
And
Simply
when you
because,
sleep at night, you're not moving a lot, right?
hang on.
You're hopefully because you're asleep. And then
There's probably 30 or so more minutes left in the podcast, which I'm going to share it. Well, let me turn my camera back on. I'm going to share it in the group, and I hope that you will go back and listen. I do want to close this out before this recording gets so long that people look at it and go, I don't want to listen to that. Because I wanted to point out a couple of things. One was early on when I started, I typed this out, but I want to say it so that it's on the recording. When I started helping people overcome autoimmune issues, a wide audience of people who had tried other ways to treat their autoimmune issues. When I started helping those people, I realized that they go through a detox when they go through the antifungal portion of what I teach. I didn't know to tell them that they needed to, I knew that they needed to help their body cleanse themselves of it so that what's getting in their bloodstream as the fungal infection dies off, the fungal infection gets into your bloodstream and your bloodstream starts trying to filter it out. And I knew that adding BioCleanse in there helped that process, because BioCleanse is something that has the magnesium and stuff in it, and it helps you actually eliminate via going to the bathroom rather than eliminating it through your skin or eliminating it through, like I never thought about the fact that what he talked about your lymphatic system. So much of your lymphatic system is around your joints. I've always wondered why people who struggle with things that are arthritic in condition or in not condition, but in nature, I've always wondered why that could be connected to a fungal infection. I knew that the immune system was at play somehow, but I couldn't understand how I'm like, well, it makes sense that it would cause breathing issues, fungal mewing. Okay, yes, thank you. I'll come back to that. That's what it's called, mewing. I knew that the fungal infection could cause breathing issues. That made sense to me. I knew it could cause skin and rash issues when you have it and when you're trying to get rid of it. That made sense to me, but I never could quite put the correlation as to why joints would hurt until listening to this man. I knew it was true because too much feedback, but listening to this man talk about your lymphatic system and saying you have so many lymph nodes around joints, and how if you're trying to get rid of a lymphatic, or if you're trying to get rid of something, your lymphatic system is trying to filter it out for you, and it's inflamed at the time when you're trying to go through that detox. I'm not 100% sure that when I was relaying the information about me and my experience with histamines and liver and detox and all this kind of stuff, I'm not 100% sure that I was conveying it to the very best, but I did want to read something to you. And this, I don't know what this is going to do, honestly, when I say this, but this morning I typed in histamine and autoimmune conditions, or histamine and autoimmune, into Google, and this came up. Histamine plays a role in autoimmune conditions and can trigger symptoms in people with autoimmune disorders. It can amplify immune responses, promote inflammation, lead to tissue damage. Some autoimmune conditions that are particularly related to histamine include rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, and then it cut off simply in my picture because there's way more to read in that list. Oh no, I took the rest of it. Hashimoto's, celiac, psoriasis, ankylosing spondylitis, Sjogren's syndrome. Symptoms of histamine intolerance include itchy eyes, itching in the nose or runny nose, headaches, coughing, itching in the skin, rashes, shingles, hives, irritation, sudden psychological changes, anxiety, chronic constipation, gas, and bloating. And I'm here to tell you that histamine leaving your body or being trapped in your body, if you're not trying to help it leave, is all it mimics. I found a blog back last summer when I was trying to get myself well from the big swollen feet and constant, almost, where I always felt like at any given time I could have a major breathing issue. During that time, I found a blog that I need to go look for again of a lady who had put together, she reminded me of myself. She was like, trust me when I say histamines and autoimmune disorders are connected, deeply connected. And I'm here to tell you that if you've struggled since COVID in whether you want to call it an autoimmune disorder, or if you want to call it joint pain, or if you want to call it breathing issues, or if you want to call it, the fact is it's all deeply connected. And the majority of it is a detox and not having proper detox pathways. It doesn't really matter how well you're trying to, how properly you're trying to get yourself well. If your body doesn't have the proper filter system, if your fish tank is not filtered right, your body is only going to go through pain. That is why his website, or whatever, did somebody put it that his website's called Stop Chasing Pain? I think it's so interesting that it's also deeply connected. And I also think it's very important. If somebody in this company was going to take on a chore like making sure that the whole company knows what an award-winning product Restore is, by way of making sure you know how to use it. Because if you just start using it, I think I figured this out because of the fact that so many people who were testers had trouble with it. And I thought, it's kind of like sleep gummies. If you take a whole one right off the bat, I don't know. I mean, 1 in 5 dentists surveyed will say, not dentists, but you know what I'm saying, 1 in 5 people are going to be okay with taking a whole one. Most people need to start off very slow. And I'm going to tell you, Restore, I believe people should start off slow. Yes. Okay, let me tell you why sleep gummies work this way. It's a detox thing too. Okay? It's the same principle. This is just not, I mean, I knew this, but it's just dawned on me to connect it together. So your receptors that will take on melatonin, your melatonin receptors in your body, if you are deficient in melatonin, they will take on toxic waste, cellular trash from old prescription drugs like Ambien or Xanax or things that you have taken in the past, and your receptors that are meant to have melatonin in them are just, imagine them like little scoopy cups filled with cellular trash from old prescription medications you've taken, etc. The first time you take melatonin, it goes to that receptor and claims its place and says, I live here. And it scoops that cellular trash into your bloodstream and gives you horrific dreams or whatever. And we didn't really train people on that. We just said, try these, they're great. And the fact is, a lot of people have to go really slow. You got to fill those receptors very slowly. You have to push that trash out slowly, and you really need to be doing what this man is talking about lymphatic massage. We haven't really even gotten into the depths of what he talks about it, which I hope you will go listen to. I hope you will go watch even one of his short videos, or any, honestly, he has like 6 points. I'd never heard of him until a few days ago. I've been doing lymphatic massage for years from an old chiropractor video that's like the most boring video on the planet. And I will tell you the tips that I have about lymphatic massage. Don't do it at bedtime if you're going to plan to lay down. Lymphatic massage is going to push that lymphatic fluid. I start here. I do it here. I do it above the clavicle. I do it subclavicle. And then I do these fingers right here. And then I do it around my ears. And I'm pulling that lymphatic fluid down my neck. I start the pump, though. You got to start the pump. Start the pump. Get the pump going. Pump, pump, pump. Then you push it down into the pump. And then I come around my face. Around my jawline. And I get the lymphatic fluid moving. And then I start coming down here, and it's here. And then you get around the abdomen, you're rubbing the abdomen, and you slapping the abdomen, and then you come down the legs and behind the knees. It's really quick. I do it every night, but I don't get the sludge all worked up and then lay down unless I want to have a sinus problem or a mucus problem or a whatever problem. You don't want to sludge it all up and then lay on your back. You want to do it when you got a little bit of time. I do it at night because I shower at night, and I like to do it. I like to do it in warm water. I like to get out sometimes and use the body cream, on those places, keep that lymphatic fluid moving, and it's hydrating and it feels good on my skin. But I don't immediately go get in bed. I stay upright for a while. Okay. I believe that is why I didn't have trouble with Restore. I immediately, they told us, they sent us a thing that says, take a scoop in the morning and a scoop at night. And I didn't know it was a liver detox. I'm just like, I probably should have read. It probably said that it was a liver detox. I just knew they told me to measure. And so I'm like, oh, that's great. So I do them one in the morning and one at night. But when I found out a lot of testers had problems with it, that only told me one thing, because we come out with really good products. And that told me it's working, it's doing something. And I already knew what it was doing for me, but I meant for the field. I was like, it's doing something. We just need to open the detox pathways. And lymphatic massage, which a lot of people actually believe is something that you go get like a massage, and it's not. Lymphatic massage is just one of the ways that we do, like detox baths, Epsom salt type soaks, dry brushing, which, by the way, I know almost nothing about, but I'm going to learn about, and we're going to go through it together and combine what we know, because I think it's so important, and I think it's so not focused on how important it is that if you're trying to herbally get yourself well, you're trying to clean the root of the problem rather than just hide a symptom. They call it alternative medicine, which is so dumb, because alternative to what? Putting synthetic stuff in your body and hoping to hide a symptom. I used to say, I think I got this out of the book Recaging the Beast, that to take a steroid shot, it is for, like, let's say you're having an allergic reaction or joint pain or whatever, and they give you a steroid shot, is the same thing as taking the batteries out of a smoke detector while your house is on fire. I mean, it's not still alerting you and driving you crazy, but the house is still on fire. And so if you don't treat that fungal infection, which is probably at the root of it, or like in this case, if you don't treat the liver, which is in probably high histamine overload, I think everybody's liver is in high histamine overload these days. Did you know that my last request, I hardly ever send in a product request. But during my stint last summer with a histamine crisis, I went to the powers that be and asked for a product that had an enzyme to properly break down histamines. Okay. Now, do I think that the powers that be took my request and said, let's do something even better? Let's cure your liver so that your liver can properly break down those histamines. No, I do not. But I do think it was spiritual. It was the answer to a lot of people's problems. And we don't even know. That's why I led with the whole histamine thing. People don't even know that that is our problem. We don't even know that what we were exposed to was synthetic snake venom, and that caused, for most people, where you're just always, your jar is just always at the top, and just one thing can cause you to go into joint pain. Just one thing can cause you to go into an asthma attack, a migraine, a stomach ache, a rash, etc., etc. And people are like, the product quit working, and it didn't. We just don't know how to flush our toilets. And that's why, by the way, I was sort of challenged. My husband tells me sometimes I'll put something out. I'll put it like within my peer group. I'll be in the Diamond page and be like, I think we need to teach people about detox pathways. And arguments broke out that are so dumb. And I don't even care if they hear that I'm saying that. Like, just so dumb about why should we have to teach people to do things in order to take a product? They should just be able to take it and it works, blah, blah. Well, personality, and maybe it's a personality flaw, but it is definitely a personality trait of mine, is that was just the spur I needed to be like, watch me. I'll teach your team too. You may be on their team. I don't know. I don't know who y'all are. But I apparently need that spur in my life, because I am by nature more of a lazy personality. It takes a lot to get me to be like, watch me rise up and do it. So if you want to know, when you're watching me post and you're like, if you're wondering what my motivation is, I would love nothing more than all of you to get well, because we figured out how to do detox pathways together. Early on in my Plexus career, people were so stubborn, and still are sometimes, that they are like, I don't want to drink water. Do you remember this? I was one of them. I just want to be skinny. I don't want to drink water. And this is the same thing, right? Like, I want to drink Coke and still get well. I'm mocking us all. Okay. I want to do all the things. And I want you to start thinking about, I'm going to close it with this. I want you to start thinking about things that you do on a daily basis that are adding to your toxic load. The brands that we use and certain things, and just, I mean, we're Americans and we're stubborn and we are kind of lazy, but I want to put some muscle behind the fact that I knew what I was talking about this. I want us to be right about it. That's also probably a personality trait / flaw. I know it is correct, and I want it to be seen that it is. So if we would pay attention to also the sludge that we add to the toxic load that we are already dealing with, that is another huge, what am I trying to say, initiative that I want to talk about in this group without people thinking I'm too weird. I don't want to tell you to, like, I might tell you, I might start teaching you about how sunglasses are what make you get sunburned. You might get me that deep. Sunglasses are what causes sunburn. I may get that deep. And that's okay. Sunscreen is toxic. It's probably causing cancer. That makes me sound weird, I realize. But also, if it opens anybody's eyes, who would have ever thought that 17-year-old me listens to a girl, a lady who's in the military say, "Ooh, don't put deodorant on your armpits. That is right next to your breast lymph nodes. That's what causes breast cancer." And I remember thinking, weirdo? Why would you say that? Weirdo. But how much sense does it make if you're putting aluminum right on your lymph nodes every day? And not only is it there, it's sealing it up because it's like, now don't sweat. Don't sweat. And sweating is the thing. I mean, like, that's how you cleanse it, right? Like, that's how what's getting rid of the toxic load. So I'm hoping that something that we talked about tonight has inspired you to even look into maybe some better organic food choices. Look into a better, maybe a water filtration system. And then maybe next week we'll add in some, I don't know if you'd call it spiritual, but there is something about, so I'm going to give you something to look forward to. There is something about inner and outer at the same time. If you can connect the two, like if you are cleansing on the inside and you take on a few projects that have been like eating at you, like let's say you need to hang the kids' backpacks because they just lay in the floor and you need to just get some command hooks and you just walk by it every day, you're a little irritated by it. I believe irritated lives in your cells too. I just do. And I believe it causes stress and anxiety, and people end up on antidepressants because they ignore the things around them that could be life-changing for them. I also think that the food and junk that we put in our bodies closely connected to like what we diagnose as ADD, ADHD, which causes this cycle of like perfectionism, depression, wanting to do something, but thinking, I don't even know how to tackle all that, so I won't. I don't know if you guys are following me on this, but some of you will really be following me on that. But that I believe that adds on extra toxic overload in your body because it's literally shifting your hormones on a daily basis. So probably next Monday, I'll put out a challenge that's like, pick 2 or 3 projects this week that are one-time projects, not like dishes or laundry, but one-time projects that will make a difference in your everyday life that you've just been putting off. And some of it may be traumatic. I can remember one time I had a plant from a funeral that needed to be repotted. And I'd had it for a long time, and it was a close to me person who had died. And I remember every time I walked by it, I would think, oh, I need to do that. Almost like it was like guilt. And I was reliving it every time I walked by it, but I would never put it on my list to go get the potting soil. I would think, yeah, I need to do that, but I just blah, 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 blah. And then I adopted this principle that I'm talking about right now, which was like the one-time things that make a big time change in your life. They quit adding those like little paver bricks of weight onto your shoulders to where you're just stacking them up, and day after day you walk by things that irritate you, make you feel guilty, make you feel like you're not enough. And I believe that there's a holistic approach to, while we're detoxing our bodies, start looking this week at things, start physically living in the moment enough, and not living inside your head, but physically living in the moment enough to look around your house and be like, yep, I've been needing to do that. By the way, I'm not talking about organize a closet that's going to puke on the rest of your house. That is counterintuitive to what I'm talking about. You don't want to make a bigger mess unless it's a mess you can clean up within the same day. But if you have like junk on your desk and every time you look at it, you think, gosh. And the thing is, it usually doesn't take but about 10 minutes. Set a timer, do it. Sometimes it takes putting it on your grocery list that I need command hooks. I need the potting soil, whatever. But we all have these things, and we never come to, I can't speak for everybody, but we never come strong enough into presence of mind in the moment to stop ourselves and say, it's a one-time thing, do it. Like, that's not doing the dishes and laundry. That's a one-time thing. And once it's done, it takes care of that problem. And for me, that was an aha thing. I actually had it all by myself one day. There's probably people out there that teach it, but I had it all by myself one day. I was like, these are one-time problems. When you see one-time problems, come into presence of mind, go to your Walmart app, add to cart what you need, or add to your shopping list what you need. Or if it's a one-time thing and it's only going to take 5 minutes of your time and you have the stuff to do it, do it. Like, just do it. And so if you guys will allow me the permission to, I would love to include some of that into like week 2 of what we're going to talk about in this group. Make some real changes. When we did this, we used to do this in my breakthrough training. That would be my week 2 is I would do a hands-on thing to go with like changing your core values. Like, we're studying core values. We're going to talk about why core values are important. And the very next week, we would add on like physical hands-on. And the way it would stick with people, they talk to me about it still to this day. They're like, for some reason, that made such a huge impression on me. And anyway, I want to see this group really fly. I want to see so many people get their liver detoxed, get the trauma out of their liver, get the anger out of their liver, all the things and the emotions that you store in your liver. You may go through a minute, but just you can tell yourself in those moments, it's cleansing me. And I'm drinking good water instead of soda pop, right? And I'm taking detox baths, and I'm doing the lymphatic massage, and I'm doing the Epsom salt baths and the things that it needs, the things that we need to do to clean out the ashtray, to clean out the fish tank, whatever you want, whatever analogy that you want to use. It's crazy that we don't think about this stuff all the time. It's crazy that it's not taught. I mean, it is taught. We just need to look in the right places. We're teaching it tonight. So, okay, I'm going to tell you really quick. I take a scoop in the morning. I take a scoop at night. I do it about 10 in the morning. I do it about 7 at night. I don't think everybody ought to start that way. I think even half a scoop, I think nighttime is probably really best because it has all the good stuff in it to set you up for a peaceful night's sleep. And your liver dumps at night. And so I think that's a really smart time to take it. Half a scoop for a few days. If you're already into this, just ignore me. But helping people get into this, if you want to do this, and you want to use Restore to do your liver detox, half a scoop at night, see how that works. Maybe increase to a scoop at night, and then consider adding one in the daytime. I do it like at 7 o'clock at night. I make sure that I stay good and hydrated. That way the sludge is not too sludgy. You're keeping it hydrated. Is it everything connecting for you guys? Like some of you this is maybe like, oh, this is so intuitive. And the thing is, it actually is intuitive once it's presented. Like it wasn't completely intuitive to me. I had to figure some of this stuff out. Once I figured it out, it's so intuitive that I don't forget it because it just makes sense. Okay. I hope I've answered as many questions as I can tonight. I thank you for hopping on here. We already been a 2-hour Zoom here. But I will share the link to this, and I will share the link to the I shared it in the comments, but I'll share it in the group too, because I want you to finish listening to what he has to say, even if you have to listen to it on the way to work tomorrow or whatever, because I think it's really important. But I had to get my 2 cents in before and after, and I appreciate y'all letting me do that. So, okay, I'm closing it out. That way the recording can go ahead and do its thing. Thanks for hopping on here, and you guys have a really good night. A great week, actually. Okay. I bet you may have to end it. I don't know if you have to end it or not. Let's see.
And stop the recording.
I think you have to
I have
stop
to
the
stop the recording.
Lauren.
Okay, let me stop the recording.